Welcome to Taiwan's half-year update. You'll be aware that I'm Grant Wilson, Executive Chair here. I just want to say thank you for taking the time and just a couple of reasons to do this session. The first is that it's been quite a while since I've been online with shareholders answering questions directly. I did try to do that. Some of you will recall in April, and we had a bit of an AV fail, so we had to re-record that session, and I didn't really get into Q&A. And it's been 6 months of dramatic change and all action here, and it hasn't been an opportune moment until now after the cap raise to provide this sort of audience. But I did want to do it because obviously part of the firm-wide transformation that I've authored is to ensure that we overhaul communications as between management and shareholders and stakeholders as well. And this session is really geared to those parties. Let me say that at the top, to shareholders and to stakeholders. Now, obviously, when you go online like this, you're going to encounter some other sorts of people. What I want to say at the top is, ignore the noise for the people who've been following the story the whole time. Naturally, when you go through a cap raise, provide a session like this, we're going to encounter a bit of noise. Just look through that, as I will. And I want to stay focused on shareholders, people who've been here throughout the journey. And also for future shareholders, people will look at these sorts of sessions in time because it'll be recorded and it's part of the digital archive of the firm. So that's the audience today. And it's an opportunity specifically after the cap raise, just to host this as soon as possible. Obviously, it's half year as well. So it is a timely moment just to recap and also to look forward. This is not a puff piece. I've looked at the questions, got substantive things to say today. And in terms of format, I think it's best if I run for about 20 minutes just on the slides that were released 15, 20 minutes ago, and then address some of the pre-populated questions that have been on Hot Copper and to email. And then we can go live as well for whatever time's left, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I'm fine to do that. And again, it's all about accountability, transparency. These things matter at a firm, particularly in this sector, because this sector is generally deprived that in terms of relationships between management and retail shareholders. So that's the purpose. And I think with that sort of precursor, let me jump right in and I'll share the screen as I talk to these slides briefly, just to run through some of the substance that we've got today. So 1 second. And apologies if it's a little bit backlit. I'm in Perth, but most of the time we'll be with the slides, so it shouldn't matter too much. So you should have the cover slide now, and you'll have seen these through the ASX portal as well. So the starting point is the cap raise, which was announced on Tuesday. I've seen various comments around this, again, inevitable when a company comes to market as we did. Most companies in this sector come to market just to raise money, right? That's the aim and the objective. And we didn't do that. Obviously, we did come to raise money because we needed it, but we were also looking to achieve a number of other objectives, which will set the company up for future growth. And that is one key point that I really want to emphasize at the top. This company, which was obviously TNG before, was in a really negative cycle of running through shareholder value through capital raises, which were poorly managed, to be polite, and also susceptible to really the two mainstream ways to raise money in this sector, which are to do a pump and a dump, which is when you engage a broker, a less reputable broker perhaps, to buy the stock ahead of time, reflate the share price temporarily, set a price in the market, dump the stock, and ultimately resolve the market lower. The second, more traditional route is to engage lead manager, come up with a discount for the shares and to price the shares at a discount, which is inevitably where the share price will trade to due to algorithmic trading, and flippers. Flippers are people that are there to monetize this form of capital raising. And that's the most typical means of raising money in this sector because management's not strong enough to price their own book and will generally take the lead from the brokers in terms of setting price. So from April onwards, once we had a foundation to raise money with the dramatic changes that we executed and secured through Q1, it was really over to me to decide, obviously not route 1, but between route 2 and route 3, what to do. And it was pretty clear early to me that route 3 was not just ideal, but it would involve setting other precedents and achieving other objectives with the cap raise. So obviously we've priced it at a minimal discount, thus preserving shareholder value and also negating the opportunity to flip. You can infer from the price, in fact, that it's all real money that's coming into Taiwan now because there's literally no opportunity and no margin in where we priced it to flip the deal. The second is that we didn't pay away any commissions And that's really important. Most of the time, and certainly in model 1 and 2, companies are paying away between 6 and 10% of the float to the street or to the brokers that organize the deal. Now, that's a lot of money. It's comprised generally of fees and commissions, but also options. So the broker will often take topside options on the company for whatever they may be worth, and often they're worthless, but at the time, they're significant. So if you raise 10 million bucks, you're paying away $1 million, more or less. We paid away basically nothing. I think it's $10,000. And that is an extraordinary outcome for this company, whilst cash is scarce, as it is at the moment. And it's also sets a precedent, for the future in terms of negotiating future commissions and deals. So that's a very important objective, which was secured. In terms of participation, as you'll well know, the roster coming out of TNG is not ideal. It's a tired register because of the journey that shareholders had to endure at TNG over a decade. And this is absolutely not a criticism. I'm here because in many ways I feel sorry for the shareholders of previously TNG, and I've referenced that before. And I'm doing everything I can to alter that trajectory, including obviously buying shares myself and redirecting the company fundamentally. But it's not the case in a situation like this that you're going to be able to turn to existing shareholders to take the company on the journey that it needs to go. Ultimately, we're going to need new shareholders, and to manage the competing interests in some senses between old and new. And an easy thing for me to have done would have been to bring in new shareholders at a significant discount, even in a placement that I led, raise a lot of money and effectively dilute the existing shareholders, both retail and large existing shareholders. And I chose not to do that because I've got a lot of respect for the shareholders that we have. And I'm a major shareholder myself, by the way. But I wanted to promote unity on the register and a common sense of purpose. Bringing new money in at the right price aligns both new and old and sets a trajectory for future growth and for future capital raisings, which will obviously be necessary for a company such as this. Fourth was ensuring that retail has an opportunity to participate. And that's something I emphasized during the campaign. The campaign was run and won effectively by retail. Obviously, we've got a really, really wide following, and that's been perpetuated and probably accentuated by the digital engagement through the first half, and that's great. Welcome that. I do want this company to remain largely in Australian hands to the extent possible, certainly through this stage. And I've always been a champion for retail, and I said I would look after retail during the campaign. So we made sure there was an SPP, and an SPP is an opportunity. Effectively, it's a free option for retail to participate. Retail does not have the opportunity to go online collectively and buy 35 million shares. It wouldn't be able to happen because there's not enough liquidity in the stock. What you've got now for the next couple of weeks is an opportunity to engage individually up to that $30,000 limit. And it is effectively a free option, and retail is thereby afforded the opportunity to participate in the future growth of the company. So that was a very important inclusion, and I hope that it's received in that spirit, because that was certainly the way that it was intended. Fifth is, to ensure that directors are aligned. Now, we've made some changes at the board today, which I'll address in a minute, but you'll see obviously Dr. Robinson and Christine participated, as I did as well, in uniform form. And that just provides that sense of alignment and unity as between management and shareholders, which obviously was lacking this company for a decade. So all of those things were achieved with this. It stands out for anyone that's actually, serious in financial markets, the pros, the big investors. They understood the magnitude of this achievement. It's a radical differentiation from peer. It sets a precedent, which means for future capital raises, we can come to market with confidence, which is important. And it means that we've still got very constructive relationships with brokers. So you'll see Canaccord was involved, part of the SPP as well. They helped out on some settlement. That was a really great working relationship, and we expect to foster that going forward. There was another broker involved, one of the A-list Australian brokers who I won't mention on this call. But suffice to say that we've made a real impact in terms of psychology around the company in places that matter, And I know I'm going to get asked this question, so just let me address it at the top. There were 4 new institutions brought to the register, all institutions that can add and scale with the company. Investments ranging from $200,000, $400,000 type range up to $2.5 million. Now, some of these names will pop up on the register. I'm not going to name them specifically now, but I can say that there was institutional representation from Europe, from Hong Kong, from Singapore, and from Auckland. And there are a number of other investors that I met on that roadshow that I expect to participate in future raises and that are now following the company with serious intent. And then again, that's necessary to promote our brand and ultimately to have a scalable pathway towards project finance. We have to establish our credibility with the street and with investors, serious investors, for this company to break out of the cycle that it was in and that most companies will stay in this sector. We need a scalable pathway to project finance and to achieve escape velocity up to and around 2 to 300 million market cap, which is where it starts to get easier. Most companies stuck around this level will stay stuck forever. And the way to achieve escape velocity is to do the hard work that I did and to price a deal basically flat to market. It captures everyone's attention and it was designed that way for a reason. So when you look at the cap raise, I would encourage you to look at this chart. It's a really stellar chart. It explains the story. It explains why I did what I did. And I guess I would ask you to trust me when I say that it's made a real impact in terms of institutional credibility for Taiwan. So that was the purpose, job done. And yeah, a couple of weeks in terms of retail having that opportunity on the SPP. Next, this is probably the most important chart today. So I have already seen some of the comments and there'll be more. And some of these comments, the substance of these comments are correct, which is like, how the hell are you going to pull this off from a market cap of 100 million plus, okay? In terms of the project timelines and scale of ambition that we outlined at the April presentation. And bear in mind again that that was coming off a period of really dramatic change that was required to save the company, absolutely required. So this involves the purchase of Speewah, the relocation to Middle Arm, the tie-up with Sun Cable, the negotiation that we're in with Cyro, relocation of Darwin office, so on and so forth. Radical retransformation of the fundamentals of the company and us setting out a new corporate mission, which is ultimately to dominate the global market for vanadium and to facilitate the entire downstream pathway to grid storage and thus make a scalable contribution to the largest problem that society faces, which is net zero. Now, these are ambitious goals. It captured the imagination of a lot of people. That was by design. Nonetheless, there are very, very significant impediments to delivering the project that we've outlined as between Middle Arm and Speewah. Absolutely. And capital raising is one of them. Now, that probably is achievable in my hands because I have unique global networks. I've just demonstrated that. And the pathway to project delivery in many ways lies somewhere between the global tailwinds that are now prevalent in critical minerals and my ability to access global capital markets in a way that no one else in Australia can, which is why I headed offshore straight away. You have to understand that around 98% of global investable funds are outside Australia. Now, Australia's got a vast resource in terms of critical minerals, but it does not command the heights of global finance. That would be the US, that would be Japan, that would be Europe, and the money centers around the region as well, Hong Kong, Singapore. And obviously in Singapore, it's a sort of special case for me because I used to work for their government for a decade. So to raise that sort of money, you need to establish yourself offshore. You need to leverage the tailwinds, government connections, and you need to put the work in, which is why I'm traveling to Japan and the US. And most of these rounds, both in terms of offtake and larger institutional tickets, will take 1 to 2 years to convert. But the clock starts now, or it started 2 months ago, when I started laying the foundations with those investors. And oftentimes you're going into a database, a pro forma, you just see the junior analysts. But the sooner you start go in marketing a company like this, the better. In other words, if you show up 2 years down the track and you have not socialized the story, you're in no chance at all. So part of that was to get the story out there. Part of that was because we were looking at a very ambitious project definition, and we still are. Everything we outlined in April is very much intact, and the work we're doing with Cyro, which is critically important, I hope will be revealed in the third quarter, late in the third quarter. And that, I think, in combination with the progress at middle arm will underline our intent to build the project that we've outlined. However, there is a very, very important addition to this diagram, which is the upper sleeve, referred to, as you can see, as Project Fast Track. Now, this is a stepping stone, and it's very important because ultimately a company like this, in my view, needs to walk, crawl, and then run. And it's very clear to the project team, to the technical advisory group, and also to the board of this company that there is now an opportunity to expedite project delivery and to do so in a more simplified fashion. So as opposed to a lot of companies, for example, in the lithium sector, shall I say, who raced to market while the going was good, came out with a pretty dubious BFS, for example, rallied their share price dramatically, and now have to true it up in recognition of delivery not being until much later than what they said, and now being punished in the share market to an unrecoverable point of view. What we're saying at Tivan is that in the heat of battle through Q1 and to present to market in April, we published our final destination for the company, a project which we believe can endure in Australia for hundreds of years, change everything, frankly. The most exciting, the most circular, the most scalable, the most important strategic project in critical minerals in Australia is owned by this company. Now, to get there, we think we need a stepping stone, something simple, something without the technology risk, something which can get this company to revenue as quick as possible and as credible as possible and as cheap as possible, thus averting the need to raise $2, maybe more, $billion out of the gates, which I won't address who said this on Hot Copper, leaving the derogatory comments aside. It's a solid point and obviously aware of that. And our answer is on this chart, which is, let's look at Project Fast Track. It's an initiative that's been underway here for a couple of months. We're not ready to fully present it to market, but I am able to socialize it today to get people thinking about it. And obviously we made an announcement this morning, which people probably didn't fully understand the implications of, which is to say we've entered into a heads of agreement with CGL, who runs the port at Wyndham. And that's a very, very important strategic partnership for this company now, one which will endure and one which we've been working on for months, in fact. So what does Project Fast Track look like? It involves mining and doing beneficiation at Speewah, and then most likely a simple and scaled back product and commodity that we can sell directly out of Wyndham. And that's it. And that's it. That's all we do. Now, what are we going to sell? There's probably three options. Some people will be familiar with what's referred to as DSO, direct shipping ore. We think that's the least likely, I would say unlikely, of the three scenarios that we're looking at here. Looking at both from an engineering point of view and from a project economics point of view. Number two is that we get the concentrate from Speewah and we sell the concentrate. Now, where are we going to sell it? China, not politically ideal, not really ideal for what we're trying to achieve with this company. There are other places in Asia potentially that we could look at. We have to work through various aspects of feasibility there, economics there, and so on and so forth. Definitely possible though. Number three is that we build at Wyndham a vanadium salt roast facility, moving from hydromet, which is what Tivan Plus is, to pyro. And we extract the vanadium as pentoxide, and we sell the commodity that we really, really want to be in the game with, which is vanadium. This would move us down a very well-known technology pathway, the sorts of technology that is being touted by the other vanadium companies in Australia. The difference is that we have the best resource, the best location, and we have the best team as well. So if we can do something stripped back, minimum viable, get us to market, get us to revenue, of course we're going to look at that. Of course. If you get to revenue as a junior miner, you explode because it's legitimate. And that gives you many more opportunities to raise money and to facilitate larger, more technically demanding and longer project delivery pathways. So this is a case of us walking and chewing gum at the same time. You can see in terms of the imagery that it's perhaps unusual, but this is us being authentic, open, transparent, and hopefully conveying to shareholders what I'm saying, which is we believe there's an expedited path. Bear with us while we work through it. It's not going to take long. We should be able to announce something pretty soon. And we'd love to be able to get to market a couple of years earlier, of course. Because again, with Speewah, we've got something quite unique. We've got a very, very high grade. We've got a very, very low strip ratio. We're very, very close to port. And we've got a resource that can scale for hundreds of years. Nothing like that exists in the world or in Australia. So on a like-for-like technology basis, why not look at this? And why not be first? Why not show up how poorly designed and conceived some of these other projects are in Australia? A lot of these guys had BFSs, DFSs out even 4 or 5 years ago. They can't get to market either because they're paralyzed working on the same resource, or because they're inferior, or because they're 500 k's from port, or in the case of Mount Peake, it's 1,300 k's. Almost impossible, absolutely impossible. It's why we bought Speewah. Speewah's different. So if we can unlock it in any which way, we can. Now, I'm not ready today to go into all the details. There are various iterations, to be frank, different commodities, even different locations. We can do different things at Speewah. We could even do different things involving the decommissioning of Argyle Mine with Rio. But there's a playfield up there which could get us to market sooner and transform the prospects of this company again by getting to revenue, and also extricate some of the risk around middle arm, which I'll come to in the questions, but obviously we're aware of, I'm deeply involved in, and yet still be a great citizen in Darwin and hold out that future promise for a project with Sire and with Darwin, which could transform the nation. So again, we can do many things here. That's the nature of innovative, dynamic leadership. The board wants options. We all want options. And my job is to communicate that to shareholders, which is what I'm doing now. And I would say as well, and I'll come to this, the formation of the technical advisory group is a very important step because it brought in globally leading acumen and expertise and networks. We have Simon Flowers, who helped do the master planning for the NT government at Darwin. He knows it inside out. And he's been involved in many projects, major projects, oil and gas in particular, which have been delivered. And we have Stefan LeBlanc, who ran Rio's iron and titanium business for a long time and has delivered more projects than probably anyone on the planet. And when we got Stefan involved, our conviction in pursuing this minimum viable approach, fastest path to market, firmed up, was trued up in many ways because Stefan's seen it all and is advising me very, very closely, filling knowledge gaps, but also bringing incredible global networks to the table. And he's all action, which I love. And he's extremely dynamic and he's an absolute killer, can I say as well. And he agrees. If we can get to market any which way, we've got to pursue it. So this is sort of the big reveal today. And I hope people take it on board and just allow us another month or two to work it through. But again, this is not to the detriment of the promised land or anything we held out. We can do both these things and we plan to. And our hope is that we can bring the company through these stages to make it credible, to make it real, and to do something which has not been done in Australia. Everyone's talking about vanadium, but no one's actually doing it. I've looked through all these companies and I don't think any of them are going to make it, frankly, for various reasons, which I won't go into, probably with the exception of Veco. I think Veco is a very good company. It's got a chance in Queensland. It's in good hands. It's privately held, but they got a lot of work ahead. So do we. But these other companies are pretending, I'm afraid. And there's a real opportunity for us to get there first, even though we've started from miles behind. And that's also down to leadership and the team we've got. And I'll come to that too. So that's a very important part of this presentation today. Please take it on board. I know people keep online saying there's nothing here. What are you talking about? Really? All right, next. The tag. We did get some questions on this. This was an initiative that I flagged back in April. I scouted about 10 people. And this was a process which I ran past a lot of very, very senior mining executives in Australia, some of the most well-known, some of the household names as well, who are watching what we're doing here. And sort of awestruck, I think, again, with the pace of delivery and the execution. It's very hard to have done what we've done. People in the industry respect it tremendously because they know. They know. So I had a list of about 10 people who I thought might be capable, might be willing to join us. And the board was very focused on building out the skill matrix of the company and providing capability in different areas. And I'm delighted to say that the 3 people right at the top of that list who we thought would get on well together and be able to lend their experience to the company all joined. We went 3 for 3 on this, which is remarkable. And we announced this obviously a little while ago. In terms of how it's working, there's a monthly meeting, but there's much more interaction going on depending on the person, their availability, their expertise, the timely requirements of the company. So I would say Simon Flowers is the most hands-on. And that's been fantastic for the project team, particularly Brendan and particularly Michael Christ, who's doing a lot of the non-process infrastructure around Wyndham, Speewah, and Middlearm. Simon's Territorian at heart. He's a fantastic guy. And his ability just to connect, sanity check the work that's already been done, and to confirm it's as good as we think is reassuring, and he's deeply engaged. Stefan, I've mentioned, his global reputation preceded him. I asked, and this is no bullshit, I asked 5 different people, who's the best person on the planet for this? I asked that question in Jan, Feb. 3 people came back with Stefan's name, 3 of 5. And so I started this conversation with Stefan, I think Feb, March, and he did months of diligence on our resource, on our flow sheet, on our team. And we were just thrilled and delighted that he lent his global reputation to this company. It's a real achievement. And I can confirm that, he's deeply involved and he really wants this opportunity to open up for the right reasons as well. And he finds it fascinating, I think, learning about some of the culture in Australia. He's deeply respectful of First Nations on country. If you look at his pedigree and achievements in Canada, you'll see that. And it's been a real pleasure. And I think it'll be an ongoing, very, very important relationship for us as we go forward. And Maria probably needs no introduction to retail as the esteemed investor of VRFB. And Maria is bringing both technical capability, insight, reputation, networks, and stamping the mission of Taiwan loud and clear. And Maria sees very clearly the opportunity we have, and that her invention, which is now critical to achieving net zero in many areas, has effectively been held up because there has not been this scalable, safe, secure source of vanadium. And she can see the opportunity we have to change that. And it's just been a great delight to meet her and welcome her. And I'm sure she'll get to meet shareholders at some point as well. So that's the HR piece. There'll be other changes in the team in short term, now that we're past the cap raise, bringing in some extra talent. But I would say that overall, we've got what we need as between TAG and the great team at Syra, which I still can't talk too much about, but I can say that we're working very closely with some of the best people, not just in Australia, but in the world, in our area of expertise. And it's just been a fantastic relationship so far, breaking down the silos, which is what I wanted to do as between industry and research. So if you look through our org chart now, the capabilities that we've got in and around Taiwan, it's absolutely a world-class team, which I think is well-placed to deliver on the opportunity that we have. So briefly, there's a slide on myself, which is confirming today that I intend to stay on. The brief narrative here should be pretty straightforward to shareholders, which is when I started the campaign, I did say 6 to 18 months that I expected to be in this role. I did not expect to walk into Mount Peake in the shape that it was in, which was not viable, which meant the company as defined was not viable. And I had to author these radical changes, which I've done. At the same time, changing obviously the entire firm culture, which had existed here for 10, 15 years. At the same time, earning a social license to operate across Northern Australia, which has never been achieved before, not even close in the case of this company. Transforming the company digitally, transforming comms, aligning the company to shareholders, all these other things that I've achieved. Where it's at today is that I'm probably in 4 or 5 long-run negotiations. So examples would be the First Nations piece. It's very important to get this right, and it's slow moving, and it's already commenced, and it's critically important. CSIRO is another example, I would say. Long-term institutional investment is another example where obviously I've started that process now. It's very important. EPC, EPCM, very important area, various negotiations going on, and so on and so forth. Government, stakeholders, shareholders. So we're getting questions about, Grant, you're going to step off. When you're going to step off, it's not conducive to close these deals out. People want certainty. They want leadership. They like what they've seen. And we wanted just to cure that today, just to show unity on the board, but also that I'm committed. People want to know that. And obviously the new investors coming in want to know that. So we've just trued that up today. I'm conscious there's always going to be this mission drift type narrative. It's not the case. How could I have known? I thought Mount Peake was going to be a fixer-upper. It wasn't quite the case. I was trying to do something for Alice. I was trying to do something in critical minerals. We are where we are. Now, I've got something very important to do in 2026. I don't see myself going past there, but I do see myself setting these foundations, getting the company as close to FID as possible, and making a graceful transition. So I won't be dropping the mic, but this will give us time to put an owner's team together for the project, to find the right people to build it. And I'm hopeful and expectant that I'll still obviously be engaged, but at the right time, a transition will occur. It's just not the 6 to 18 month time horizon that I anticipated whilst I was blind on the outside, as everyone else has been. So I hope that's well received. I'm sure it will be. There's great recognition, I think, of what we've achieved thus far. But I want to emphasize that's just the precursor. What you've seen is not the case that will change in terms of the dynamic energy, the deal making, the cap raising in terms of quality, timing, so on and so forth. These things that we've instituted, the values, the principles, have changed the company durably forever. If we need a little bit more time to bed them down, so be it. If we need more time to close deals to make sure we've got maximum commercial leverage in those deals, so be it. Even if I step off at the end of 3 years, I'll still be involved, making sure that this company has every opportunity to deliver on the vision that we've put forward. And I think I will. It's just going to be complicated for me in 2026, but that's a long time away. So we'll see. So I want shareholders, small, large, new, to understand that I'm committed. You can see that through my actions, buying shares. And today it's just really a formalization of that. So next, I just want to mention that obviously we've announced that Simon Morton has retired from the board effective today. I want to thank Simon. I've thanked him before, but I want to thank him again publicly for these 7 months. Simon was in an incredibly difficult position through the change campaign and walking into me, I would say. And we had some difficult moments, particularly at the start when I was trying to figure out what was going on, what was true north and what wasn't. I want to say that Simon's played a really instrumental role in facilitating the transition. He's done more than could have been asked, actually, particularly in the last couple of months after he decided to retire, which I accepted, because I do ultimately want the board to be reshaped and reformed as it is in the process of being. But Simon's played a really, really constructive role. And in exiting in this way and in this time after the cap raise, which I asked for as well, I'm really grateful to him. And we'll remain in touch. And I'm sure Simon will be available to Taiwan with his expertise, particularly in titanium. It is truly like world-class in terms of his understanding of that sector. So it's full respect, not just from me, but from the board. This is from Anthony. This is from Christine. It's a sincere thank you. And I want shareholders to understand that as poisonous and as broken and as disreputable as previous management was, I don't include Simon in that. I really don't. And that's based upon me working closely with him for the past 8 months. He's been great, and he's played a really, really important role in allowing us to have this opportunity to emerge and to become a strategic leader in the critical minerals sector in Australia. So thank you, Simon. Okay, I'll wrap this section up, which is what's next. Jumping around a little bit here. We did this back in April, this slide. And you'll see we lived up to it. Not puffery. We're telling you all of the corporate events, not all, but most, the ones that are important and interesting events that I've chosen to attend, speak at. You'll see there's a couple of days there on First Nations. It's very important. It's confidential, but in terms of where it's at and who it's with, but it's very important. There's a lot of leadership thinking that's going into the impact that critical minerals will have on First Nations relations right across the country. Taiwan's been selected as an exemplar of that, which is fantastic. Really proud to attend that. Some international travel, which is for the reasons that I mentioned before. And there's going to be a couple of big events in Darwin, which are going to be fun and fantastic. We've made a real impact in Darwin, and it's great to be at the top table up there. So looking forward to that. You'll see on Twitter, where I've been more and more active as part of digital engagement, the AGM. We had a bit of a glitch on the poll, but it's going to be in Darwin or Jabiru. Some people might know Jabiru, but it's great. It's an opportunity for people in Darwin to come. We've got a real following up there, opportunity for government to come, and so on and so forth. And so thank you for those who've expressed interest to attend. And we'll put some event planning together over the next couple of months to facilitate that and make it a really welcoming environment. Now, I am not sure, I forget who asked this, but I am not sure if there's ever been an AGM of an ASX listed company in the NT before. It's actually complicated. It's not a trivial thing to research because there are a couple of small companies that are ASX listed with headquarters up there. I think it's ERA and a couple of gold miners, but where they hold their AGMs, we don't know. I think it's actually Brisbane. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to show up for this, and it's going to be fun. And it, again, just stamps that sort of authentic mission that we've been on right through the territory. As difficult as it was, Taiwan's in great standing up there now, and that extends across environmentalists, First Nations, community. It's been really fantastic and really warming. It's been one of the most rewarding aspects of this journey for me personally. And so, of course, I wanted to be in Darwin or Jabiru, and we'll see which one it lands, but it will be late October, thus averting the need for an EGM. I don't want to hold another meeting. We don't need to do it, given the structure of the placement. There will be some resolutions required at the AGM now, specifically around restructuring third way compensation, placement authorities, things like that. But bringing the AGM forward a month will let us do that without disturbing shareholders any further. We've added SIRA and Project Fast Track in there as two major strategic priorities for Q3. And again, there's not much I can say right now about the work that we're doing with SIRA, other than what we said in the announcement in April, which is we are negotiating. It's a long path. I expect it to come to a successful conclusion in this time horizon, and it will be transformative for this country, for this company. So that's exciting. And obviously, I've spoken extensively about Project Fast Track, so I won't belabor the point. The values, as I said before or alluded to, are now part of the DNA of this company. And I would say the team, I think I said this in one of my tweets, which is the team is now battle hardened. We've endured a lot and got through a tremendous amount of work. And when you come through the fire like that, as we did, you'll see unity, you'll see character, you'll see strength, you'll see resolve, you'll see determination. And that goes across the project team, the new people we're bringing in, TAG, the board, everyone's up for this now. It's really important, and we know it. We know the opportunities there, and there's a tremendous determination within the team to push this on and to deliver something for shareholders. Okay, so that's the formal presentation. Let me wrap up these online questions quickly, and then we'll get into the online Q&A, just conscious of time. And so I've got these in front of me. These were sort of compiled from Hot Copper and from the Ask Me Anything email address, and sort of organized a little bit. So I won't name individual question askers, but I just will touch upon the general topics or specific points that were raised and do my best just to rip through in the interest of time. So the question about how you're going to possibly raise this amount of money and how much is the cost of Taiwan Plus and Speewah, all the rest of that, I think I've addressed that, which is we've got a stepping stone. Want to make that very clear in terms of Project Fast Track. And in terms of how to raise these big sums, it's offshore, it's by putting the work in, and it's by putting really strong precedents in the market. Now, this is not me self-aggrandizing on this cap raise at all, okay? We have to do it, but the precedent we set on that discount will endure. Every sophisticated investor, maybe not retail, maybe not the hot copper crowd, maybe they don't understand cap raises, how it works. The most important thing is that we cleared that money despite the duress the company's been under, at an incredibly low discount. And we brought in great strategic names. Fantastic. And there's more to come. Sends a potent signal. If you don't understand that, then I think switch to a different room, because you do not understand finance. And so these trips I'll be doing and the networks I have globally provide an opportunity for this company to raise money in a way which is radically different than anyone else. And I need a bit of time, but I'm putting those foundations in place. We're putting the work in. Largely, it's about reps. Reps. You're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs to raise a lot of money, but you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to start as early as possible, which is what I obviously did. Now, I'm being told to stop sharing the screen. I hope I don't kill the session. Let me try. All right. I think that worked. Everyone's still with us. Just bear with me. Right. Okay. So I know that there's sort of a caustic tone on some of these questions. I'm just going to try to ignore the caustic tone and just answer directly as much as possible. Okay. So can we get feedback on the tag crew? I've already been through that. The division of labor between effectively non-process infrastructure, comparing locations, cost build-ups, all the technical work required around NPI, more in Simon Flowers' world, sort of job sharing and really even mentoring Michael Chris. But Michael's really emerged in the past 3 months as a great, potentially generational leader at this company, along with Brendan. And everyone will know, who's been watching, the regard that I hold Brendan in on process. Brendan is a unique asset. I remember within a week of landing at the company saying, and publicly as well, that Brendan had key man risk written all over him, and that's absolutely proven to be the case. And I see Brendan and Michael really as the next gen here. And in effect, Stefan is working most closely with me and with Brendan. And so that's sort of the soft division of labor. Whereas Maria is helping guide us down that vanadium pathway, not to produce electrolyte, not to produce batteries. The companies that are holding this out, it's because they've run out of ideas. They know they can't raise money to do the vanadium, so they're just pretending they're going to do this downstream stuff. It's the refuge of the damned, I would say, to do that. What we're saying very clearly is that we're going to produce a lot of vanadium, and I'm going to get innovative on how it's priced, how it's marketed, potentially building an online platform as well. And if we can do that well, everything will change. Everything will change. And so Maria's working with us in those aspects, and also bringing networks to this company, which no one else has globally as well. So that's really important. In terms of how the office in Darwin is going, it's going great. It's small. We're having a party. It'd probably have 100 people come. So I don't know how we're going to host it there, but I think we've got an upstairs venue as well. The goodwill towards Thailand in Darwin is extraordinary. There's an understanding of the journey. There's full respect. I've earned a reputation or a catch call from the government, the senior chief minister and so forth. They say that I'm a guy that when he says he's going to do something, he actually does it. And that apparently is very refreshing, because a lot of people do the opposite. And we know that, obviously, in mining. But what I've said, I've held up that I was going to do, I did it. And I take very seriously, people know what I say and the expectations it creates, and then I look to deliver on that. And so in Darwin, there's just a great warm glow around Taiwan, and there's intrigue around the stance that we're taking at Middle Arm. Middle Arm is fascinating, and I'll come to Abandon's questions here, because what you're seeing is the energy transition up close and personal between gas, and particularly the controversial fracking projects, and then us providing this incredibly circular definition and potentially facilitating grid storage at scale with sovereign capabilities, changing the trajectory of Australia on net zero. That's the scale of the ambition, providing circularity between solar and the grid, all these things. So it's like the old school and the new school, old gen, new gen. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. But I think in the next 2 months, there's going to be a ton of noise around Middle Arm. There's a lot of community activism. There's a lot of environmental First Nations activism to come. I think it will come to a head around the strategic environmental assessment when the government reveals some of the harbour disturbance which has been proposed, which does not involve Taiwan. We're coming in at East Arm ultimately. And so we'll have to see how that plays out. But one of the reasons I contributed to an AFA article, which was very widely read, and I've been very public about this on Twitter as well, and why we're being endorsed by the environmental groups in the territory, which is unheard of, absolutely unheard of, is because we're distancing ourselves from this consensus view that the federal government ought to be subsidizing gas infrastructure. I don't agree with that. As part of the energy transition, I think we need to move on. What I'm looking to do is to reshape the subsidy in Middle Arm in terms of its sequence and scale, and ultimately to facilitate renewable infrastructure as a priority. So there's a lot of work that could be done at the back of the precinct, which would involve things like the network, terrestrial infrastructure, water, land clearing, and offsets. That could all be sequenced earlier than harbour disturbance to the advantage of the truly renewable projects which are proposed. And there's a big cohort here. There's a big middle ground at Middle Arm. You're getting this very polarized debate between, environmental activism and then fracking, effectively. There's a big middle ground where we are at. We've helped to find it. We've defined it effectively. But think of FFI, think of Sun Cable, think of Total Iran with their green hydrogen project. That's the center of gravity for the precinct. And we're leading that publicly. And we're negotiating with the NT government, with the federal government. And we're going to stay out of the real political dogfight. That's not our role. But we'll be accountable for what we say. And we're having a tremendous impact in terms of how people are thinking about that. And I always want Taiwan to be a constructive influence for sustainable development in the territory. That's Middle Arm, that's Sandover, where we're accelerating our lithium exploration with Earth AI, who are a fantastic partner. That's the work that I had to do with the Central Land Council to unwind the mistruths they were told about Mount Peake. So there's a lot of really deep work that we've done in the territory for the past 6 to 8 months. Our social license is firmly intact. It's a product of tons of work on the ground and, again, honest, authentic Territorian communications. And so I value it tremendously. There's more to say, but I would urge shareholders to understand that if Middle Arm looks to be, really noisy, off track, not to be concerned, because the project Fast Track that I've outlined today does not involve Darwin. It just involves Speewah, Wyndham, that's it. Much simpler. So we can have a longer track. We can see how Middle Arm settles down. We're not beholden to the complexity there to get to market. Okay. Now we want to stay there. We're headquartered there. The mood in Darwin's great. The government has really supported us. We're a big fish up there, because it's a much smaller pond than Perth, where I am today. I can add as well, I've been meeting the WA government today, tomorrow. That's the third round of meetings. They understand the importance of this project to the East Kimberley, to the town of Wyndham, Kununurra. There's a real opportunity for us to have a similar impact on economic development, First Nations community up in the East Kimberley. Because with Rio pulling down Argyle, it's been around for 30, 40 years. It's leaving a big footprint. And there's great commercial synergies potentially between them pulling down and us pulling up. But we've got to earn it, and we've got to spend more time up there on country, as we have been doing. We've been there for weeks. And we've been working with the First Nation communities very, very closely. And I don't want to say too much, but, I can confirm that, and it shouldn't be a surprise, that there's a very strong grapevine effect in First Nations communities, as between Alice, Darwin, Kununurra, Wyndham, Broome. And of course, they consult with each other and compare notes. And the reputation that we're forging at this company in terms of First Nation engagement, I think will hold us in durably good stead as we work through the various negotiations and permissions and requirements around Speewah. And I think we'll find creative ways to do things which are more aligned as between this company and the interests of First Nations communities than has probably ever been done before. Like, that's how ambitious I want to be, how creative I want to be. So more to say on that in due course, but suffice to say that, it's very important for this company to have that reputation right across Northern Australia and around Central Australia as well. When I talk about the durable competitive advantages the company's got, I mean that. I think it's largely the resource, Speewah, the technology pathway around Taiwan Plus and that incredible aspirational project definition that we've held out. That's always going to be valuable for this company. Absolutely always. No one else has got that. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. And then I often say in our community, and what I mean is that, like, I think the fact that we're getting these endorsements from the environmental group, from First Nations, pastoralists, government, it puts the company in a different place than most resource companies. It gives us a chance to go through constraints which other people are facing dutifully, respectfully, inclusively. And that's the opportunity that we've got. And I think now a fourth advantage, which I want to talk to you more about in the months ahead, is the team. Like what we've got now between Cyro, Tag, our core crew, who are battle hardened once again. I mean, I'm bullish. I really am. And I've worked, as everyone knows, in many industries. I know what a dysfunctional company looks like, which was TNG. I mean, it was beyond dysfunctional. But what we've now got at Taiwan after 6 months is remarkable. And everyone's up for it, which is great. So yeah, really, really important differentiation actually now within the team, broadly defined. The capabilities we've got, I think, are unlike anything in the country, certainly in this sector anyway. Okay, so competing energy solutions, Bourse Bandit, good question. You know, we are sort of all in on vanadium redox flow batteries. That's for good reasons, which is to say it's the most proven technology for what we're confronting for grid storage. There are limitations on pumped hydro. These projects are in desperate trouble, particularly Snowy. The Queensland projects are very expensive, the ones that have just been announced. My brother's working on one of them, so I know it very well. But that's probably a decent cost comparison. And then you've got lithium ion with all the well-known deficiencies, not just in terms of flammability and short duration, cycle lives, lack of recycling, but this dependency I've previously addressed, which I won't go into again, which is this stuff's manufactured in China. And, you know, that's always going to be an issue for the Australian government for critical infrastructure. We don't have to do mass production of batteries. I personally don't believe there'll ever be an EV sector mass produced in Australia. We don't have the scale. We just don't. Vanadium's different for that reason. You know, these batteries can pop up in small scale or grid scale if we can unlock this very special resource for the country. Now, are there other competing technologies that can come along? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of technologies that can address energy storage, of course. Sodium ions, all the rage in China at the moment, for example. But again, shorter duration, not proven. On the technology readiness index, it's 1, 2, 3. These things take decades. Okay. Now, VRFB's been there, done that. It's operational. We're good to go. But that's why it's sort of like a race. You know, I want to actually impart this message to shareholders today. I want to win the race. And you guys probably know that I'm, you know, a little bit competitive. And so if we have this opportunity to win the race and to get vanadium to market, it gives that commercial leapfrog effect. And you need that because whoever wins the race is going to dominate. It's sort of like EVs. You know, there's debate, lithium ion, hydrogen fuel cells. Elon got there first. He won the race. That becomes the default. It's impossible for hydrogen fuel cells to catch up once you're there because all the infrastructure scales around that. So that's why I want to crack on and get there first. I really do. Competing technologies. And even then, the problem is so large. Like the demand pull on grid storage is just astronomical. So there's no shortage of demand as such. There could be other solutions, sure. But if we get there first, build these incredibly important facilitation relationships, start changing minds, start changing political narratives, that's how you get there, right? But I don't want to wait. I want to get there as soon as possible. That level of urgency that you've seen through the first 6 months of this year, that's going to animate this company over the next 2.5, certainly. And so that's what we're trying to achieve. There are always constraints, of course. Like I've said this internally, the two constraints I see are the laws of physics. You know, you can't break those, right? You've got to have something which comes out of a lab, and the laws of the land, right? The laws of the land. I'm not going to break the law. Might change a law or two, but it's different here. It's not TNG anymore, all right? We're doing things by the book. We're just doing them aggressively. And in deal making as well. I don't know how many deals I've done so far, 6, 7, it's a lot. These are aggressively negotiated deals, and that will continue. You know, I'm approaching people with intent, and they are with me as well. And we're winning respect as we go, and they understand what I'm about now, and that we're not going to get run over in any situation, on the contrary. And so all those things can metastasize over the next couple of years now. And I believe if we stay on this level of this pace, that we can be first. We can, even though we're starting years behind, because I see nothing in this sector that looks like us. It's not even close. Just for a level of insight, I was contacted by a major shareholder of one of the companies at Gabonintha. There are two trying to mine the same resource, which is sort of upside down and crazy when you think about it. Imagine if there were two companies trying to do Speewah, how just nuts that would be, right? But that's where they are. And they asked me to take them out. Taiwan, could Taiwan make two on-market bids, one for AVL, one for TMT, with my activist roots, me winning retail, strong backing of instos, and merge those companies, because I think that probably does need to happen. I said no for two reasons. One, we're slightly busy, and it would be somewhat of a distraction, even though I do think I'd win that. Number two, we'd end up with an inferior situation. Speewah is miles beyond that. It's not even close. Concentrate grade, proximity, strip ratio, scale. We've got what we need here. I'm not engaging in things like that. So politely declined and just simply suggested to sell their shares and come over to us, and we'll see how that goes. And that will be a repetitive narrative over the next couple of years as we start to get recognized and people start to put a bit of respect on what we've achieved here already. Our next question is, sometimes there's this, the share price is still here type thing. And this is a burden that we have to carry, I have to carry. And it's probably ongoing for a little while yet, in the sense that I'm obviously aware of where the share price is, and it doesn't look any different, right? So as much as the whole company's been transformed, I think people recognize these incredible changes that we've put through. It's like, well, the share price is still here, right? And the burden is that, the company that I walked into was worth nothing. So in a sense, it was misrepresented, not even in a sense. And so, when I talk to the major shareholders, they understand that. They understand that their shares were going to zero. Retail is still somewhat in denial about this, unfortunately, and I understand, and I've been sympathetic, I still am, towards people that have held this company for that long. All I can say at this point to answer this question is that I think it will feel and look different at some point, hopefully soon, particularly when the company starts to re-rate. I think when the share price goes up through 10 cents, I think it will, obviously, inevitably. When it does that, I don't think we'll see it again. I think it will explode somewhere around there. I picked that number just because obviously the stock market, the bids shift and so forth in terms of spreads. But as opposed to previous cycles, you pop, drop, what we're putting in place, the foundations are durable. And if and when we start to get recognized for that, probably most likely through some of the deal flow that I've got lined up, I don't think you'll see the share price again. It will go up durably. That's my expectation. So again, asking for patience, understand different shareholders have different things, but I would not use the share price. I would not use the share price to measure the achievements of the management team, the project team over these past 6 months. Just look at what we've done. It's unprecedented. And at some point that will be rewarded in the share price, of course. And I hope that point is soon. And what I would say is if and when that happens, it will cascade upwards because there's positive convexity, to use a hedge fund phrase, to what we've done here, which is to say we'll emerge in a positively reinforcing cycle. Good things will yield good things. And that's ultimately how you re-rate. And that's ultimately how you drive sustainable shareholder value, which is what we're looking to achieve. In terms of Leslie's question on direct shipping or concentrate, price per ton, all this, these are the things, Leslie, that we're working through. I've outlined Project Fast Track now, and again, 3 basic options in terms of getting to market: direct shipping ore, which you've just referenced, a concentrate, which is sort of implicit in your question, or doing that extra layer of value add, which is vanadium salt roast, and facilitating that, energy, gas, so on and so forth. So all these things are on the table. I would say probabilistically, the DSO route that you're proposing is the least likely. And my preference is to do the salt roast at this point, but we need to do more work, and we're working real fast on that, real fast. Engineering, whatever happened with SMS? SMS is a shareholder of this company. Is the Taiwan engineering process being finalized? It's a combination of the work we're doing with Cyro, but I can confirm that we're doing, and I'm involved and have been involved in various negotiations for EPC, EPCM. Yeah, that's a big decision for this company. I'm not rushing it. I believe that if you appoint the wrong company, you end up in the wrong place. And I want competitive tension in that conversation. and obviously this company to be in the strongest position possible to yield the best results. The basic negotiations, and this is actually largely informed by Stefan and his vast experience, again, delivering multiple projects all around the world. When you're looking at EPCM and EPC, is to understand that whoever you appoint is probably going to have an A, B, C, D team on their end, and you want the A team. You actually want to see who you're working, what they've done. A firm is not just a homogenous group. It's going to have tiers. And if you get stuck with a D team, you're stuck. Second would be that whoever you appoint, you want them to come with you forever, like to project delivery. If someone can't either deliver the project, which is where this company was, or if someone tries to break, either you or them halfway through, you're going to have a lot of problems. It's going to cost a lot of money, cost a lot of time. So you want to be confident in the capability to go, all the way. And then there's a cost. Some companies are more expensive, some companies are cheaper, so on and so forth. The general principle here is that there's value as well. And so where we're steering at the moment is towards the most reputable players globally, I can say. And I can say as well, there's tremendous engagement. Like we've been at this for 3 months. And pretty much as soon as we inked the pitch book, the call started, we picked up those conversations. Obviously, I've been busy on a bunch of things, and we're going to make the right decision at the right time for the company. It's not that pressing a decision because we're working internally and again, externally in various ways already. But it's a very, very important decision for the company because it sets a trajectory for the years ahead. And so we don't rush it. But I do want it decided at the right time, on the right terms, and with the right people. Like we're learning about people as well. And they're watching everything. They watch the cap raise, of course. Again, a signal to these guys that this is serious, and they understand that. Serious people understand what we just did. Less serious people, not so much. And so next would be from Paul. This was an AMA. I won't use your last name, Paul. Besides us rusted on shareholders, who do you believe you've impressed the most over the past months with new direction, and how will that positive impression benefit the company? Who have impressed most the most? I would say, in the territory, we've gone from blacklisted to being a real exemplar of best in class. Like we're helping to author some things in the NT government's resource reset, which will happen over 6 months. And so broadly, I'd say the territory, but that includes First Nations, environmentalists, it's such night and day. People are so shocked that you can go from A to B, right? So I'd say that's probably the area, I would say. But I think we're winning over people in the mining industry now as well. People saw me coming through, who's this guy, all that. But now with the hard moves and the people that are joining the company, the progress, the discipline, the pace, biggest mining companies in the world calling in, finding out what's going on, if there's scope to engage, so on and so forth. So the mining industry is taking notice because we've got that big aspirational project goal as well. If we were just saying, yeah, we're just going to do vanadium salt roast, it wouldn't be the same. Because we've got this promised land, which is real. It's absolutely real. We're getting engagement with the biggest mining companies in the world. They're paying attention. They're engaged. They're impressed. We're doing stuff they can't do as well. So it's not, I know there's this speculation a while ago about us getting taken out and all this. It's not the right time for them or for the project because we're doing things which they can't do. We've got a social license they don't have, and we're making moves much faster than any of those guys can do. So there's a time and a place for those conversations. It's great to know it's there. Project partners could be really transformative if it's the right thing for the company. But all of that's ahead of us. And I would say it's a combination of NT broadly defined, Paul, and probably the big end of mining, the global guys, top 3, without giving the game away. I think there's recognition of the disruptive intent here, and that mining needs a shake-up, and that critical minerals can be redefined because it's almost like a greenfield. So I think that light's sort of gone on as well. So that's how I would answer that. All right, so 20 minutes to go. I'm going to get into these online questions. I haven't looked at these yet, so just bear with me. All right, I'm going to start with Ray. I would like to see your questions. Why can't everyone see your questions? And so that's just a Zoom protocol, Ray, so I'm not going to waste time on that. Okay, Don, 5 capital raisings have been from 2018 to 21 for 53 million, and now another one 2023. What will be different this time? I mean, Don, obviously, I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to everything that's happened here. I'm not going to be held accountable for what happened at this company over the past decade. I'm the guy that swept through, sacked 2 boards publicly, 5 directors, changed everything. If you can't see what's different, then just look closer. And for this cap raise, just look at the pricing chart that I sent out, how radically different it is. Again, TNG was in this, this pump and dump mode with that last cap raise. You can look at it. Everblue is on the ticket. My former colleagues at the Fin Review blew up Everblue for this whole reason. And, they're absolutely, at it with that practice. And you could even just look at the volumes, the trading volumes around that raise, that last raise they did. Just look, it spikes. This is public information. I'm not going to talk about what I've actually found here, but that was a classic pump and dump raise, 100%. And the other raises that were done here, all these deep discounts, and the stock will chase it down to the discount. You end up in a negative cycle, and that's what happened here. The raises here were just to facilitate the lifestyle and the lives of previous management. That was it. There was no project. There was no feasible project. And I walked into that. And I'm sorry to say it, but that's the reality of what I did. And that's what I found. And the board, I've said this before, we had no choice. There were 2 choices at Christmas. Do what I said, hit that narrow path as we've hit it, and redefine the company. And I'm really proud of what we've achieved. Or liquidate the company. That was it. So if you can't see what's different, then I just urge you to look a little bit closer. And the money that I've raised will be used, to further the company, but also to achieve short-term and medium-term goals. But again, setting us up for raises, which in the future, shareholders are not worried about because there's no discounts. That's the difference. There's always talk, I'm going to raise money and all this. If you're raising flat, it's just providing the ability for management to grow the company in a highly aligned fashion for shareholders. And that was the purpose. That's the signal. That's fundamentally different. And again, if you can't see that, again, just look closer. Just look closer. The average discount in this sector is 17%. TNG on average was raising down 20. And then just coming up with optics and noise, unfortunately. Okay, so this is radically different, and I don't want to belabor the point, but it's important that people understand that, because the instos, the brokers, the real investors, the new investors, they all understand that and have full respect for what we did. It was a breakthrough moment. Yeah. Okay, Jacob. Appreciate your input. Believe. Thanks, Jason. That's just a compliment. What other plans or options for Mount Peake now? Mount Peake, we've said publicly, can be used to validate and commence a pilot plant earlier for Taiwan Plus. We're looking at that. We're working with Cyro on that. We won't be able to take ore out of Speewah, bulk samples, until after it stops raining at the end of the year. So if we really want to fast track the pilot, we need to get our hands on about 100 tons of ore. And we've got the relationships at Sterling Station, the goodwill of the CLC to do that. And we will at Speewah as well. It's just, we don't have time this year, and it will rain. It will rain heavily for 4 months up there. So we'll make that decision at the right time as to whether that's an economical use of funds, but it still has an important role to play. And in the future, people will see that we broke the facilitation leases to save some money at 30 June, which is important. We're not just going to carry those costs, for a decade. It could, in some distant future, be possible to build Mount Peake if you've got Taiwan Plus cranking and Darwin technology's proven up, but you have to lead with the strongest projects. And even with Peake, I don't think you could send it to Darwin. You'd have to send it to Whyalla because the train route is cheaper going down south. So Peake is still a valuable strategic asset. We might drill underneath it at some point, but it's a very deep resource. So I'm not sure if you found something, even if it would be viable. The most economical use of the limited funds we have is to focus on the Sandover project at Central Australia with our great partner, Earth AI, with Roman, who I trust implicitly because I've worked with him before in a totally different area. We did I built a cloud computing facility in the Caucasus a while back. And Roman was one of my beta testers because we needed to send packets of data across around the other side of the world to ensure that it worked at the speed of light. And he's a very, very sophisticated guy, very sophisticated. And I trust him 100%. And he's great on country as well. He's out there now, just outside of Alice, actually. And he's using our gear and equipment. And it's great to have a trusted partner out there doing expedited exploration work at a really prospective tenement is exciting. It would be a tremendous irony and a karmic moment if Roman finds something big at Sandover. For people that know this story, you know, why Burton bought Sandover and the caveats that, you know, he didn't disclose. And then me having to rip that away from Norm Lepega under duress in January to clean it up and then be able to point Roman out there whilst Mount Peake is being trued up in terms of its actual situation with stakeholders that were lied to. If Roman finds lithium out in Sandover, it would complete the circle. I'd love that, but let's see what happens. I do think we're going to get results fast. He's operating at my speed. I love that. And I trust him 100%, as I said. So Mount Peake will remain on the balance sheet. We've only written down the facilitation leases. I think that's all we have to do. The technology started there and it is valuable. It is valuable, the Taiwan technology, 100%. I've said that before, but we had to redeploy it. We had to redeploy it and we had to redeploy it to the best resource and best project facilitation locations possible. And that's what we're doing. And the journey is evolving. But in terms of Peake, it will disappear for a while in terms of it's important to this company. And that's been clearly communicated. Distressingly, again, an irony that me, you know, kid from Alice Springs was the person that had to true that up when I was trying to do the opposite. So if anyone, you know, doubts me on this, I've had questions like, why did you do this? Like, are you misrepresenting how bad it was? Are you serious? You know, like I did this for Alice, this whole campaign. If anyone wanted Peake to work, it was me. It was me. But it fell to me to go and tell the CLC. And it's taken months. I'm going to go out in country and tell the traditional owners. It's heavy. It's real heavy. I don't think people understand it, the impact this has on country. It's really serious, really, really serious. And that was a big reason why I went on this whole run. I didn't know I was going to be here, let alone here for 3 years, but I am enjoying it. I think we've got this massive opportunity. I'm animated about it now. And, you know, people who know me, who've worked with me know that once I've made my mind up to do something, I'm committed and I'm serious. And everyone knows that now, you know, in the territory, in the team. I'm talking about people I've worked with globally and in New York. So once I'm set and I'm set here, I'm going to do it. And so I want to emphasize, though, that it's not like this one-man show. It's not. Taiwan is much broader than that. I've been really, really clear about that and building out firm culture, the team, the open architecture. I'm really proud of what we've got. And people are going to associate this with me. I understand that, you know, that I've led that. But, you know, I'm not going to claim this beyond the leadership role, which I have to play to make these hard moves. It's very much a team culture. And we're putting in place best practices all over the sector, which will ultimately enable me to slide off gracefully whilst the company goes ahead. And a shout out to the board as well, because Christine's joined us and that was a big decision for her. She's got a huge reputation, particularly in the sustainability sector, good governance. And she knew when she was interviewing with us that it was still red hot and very precarious. It's back Feb, March, you know, and we got to know each other really well because we co-authored some of the Critical Minerals Office submissions. So I knew her philosophy, got tremendous respect for her, but she knew she was walking into a really difficult situation and she nonetheless lent her really significant standing to this company whilst it was still, you know, at that precarious point. And obviously Dr. Robinson did even more than that, you know, and I know there were question marks about Anthony buying shares. I hope that's all been addressed now, because without Anthony, we're not here, guys. It's not happening. Anthony jumped into the fire with me to start that campaign. And he's been fantastic all the way, providing that balance for me because I'm operating so fast. And he's providing that sanity check in key moments and wisdom and guidance. And he's been instrumental in steering some of the big decisions, which then I go and execute. But as counsel, he's been great. And now we've got Anthony and Christine together. Myself, it's a totally united board with a great skill matrix, and I think other people will join. We've got other people to join, but we're just waiting and deciding right moments, right skill sets, right alignment, state of the company. But we've put on such a remarkable series of achievements that there's a lot of people that want to join now, and that's great. So at the right time, we'll do that. Anonymous, do you foresee more fundraising going forward? Well, yes, by definition. I mean, I'm really, okay, I'm going to hammer this point, all right? You need to understand, guys, I'm going to break the psychology of retail. You've been so drummed into submission by previous management and by the lies that get told right across this sector, by management broadly defined in this sector, dilution, cap raise, fear, all this, right? And I understand that because a lot of these management cultures are deficient and they're doing it to facilitate lifestyles and so on and so forth, okay? The companies that emerge are very few, and they do it because they raise capital well. And when you raise capital well, it's bullish. It's not bearish, it's bullish. It's great. It shows that you've got the credibility of new investors coming in. They believe in the mission. The people that just join the register for new investors, they're not coming in to flip because there's no margin to flip. So you can tell straight away. It's obvious. They're coming in to add. We develop, right? We hit our milestones. We live up to what we've said we're going to do. They'll add, and they won't command these massive discounts. And again, you spiral upwards. And there's a whole bunch of other investors I met that are prepared to come on this journey if we keep progressing at the rate we're progressing. So I'm just telling you, please stop asking this asinine question of me. Go ask that question of a different company. If you're not watching, you don't understand it, then don't waste my time with this, okay? Raising money is an art, it's a science, it's a discipline. It's all about trust, reputation, and it's all about the achievement of economic returns which exceed the cost of capital which you've raised. So all these other companies in the sector, I understand that you can level that charge at them and at previous management, this company, most certainly. Do not level that at me. That's not appropriate, and it's not consistent with what I just did, raising money at a 1% discount. That is an extremely bullish event, and I went as far as providing the opportunity for retail to participate as a free option over the next couple of weeks. And I hope they do. I hope they understand that I didn't need to do that, but I chose to do it, okay? So when we bring named, esteemed investors into this company, that will be catalytic. And of course, they're not going to buy on market. And of course, that means fundraising because we've got to build stuff. So it's by definition. The question is, how do you do it? And I just showed, okay? Andrew, is there any chance of government funding a substantial amount for critical minerals development per report submitted in your engagement with various government to date? So this is Andrew, I'm going to say Buckingham because he's on Hot Copper. I've used his name before, always really informed questions. And, shout out to Andrew. We don't speak on the phone or text or anything, but I remember you from the campaign. So the story with the government funding is briefly that we made a crash through submission to the Critical Minerals Development Grant on Feb 20. That was just the day after we bought Speewah and just after Middle Arm announced, right? And it was all so fast. They were trying to do 100 things at once. The CMO received our submission and they'd already knew about us from the big presentation that we made. But, I think the complexity of what we were doing and the speed at which we were operating, it was all just too fast for the government. And ultimately, the small grants that were given out were reflective of where they were at, which was like $1 million here, $3 million there. And, we were looking for something more. So we sort of weren't, it didn't make sense for the government at that time to fund what we were doing. And I would say, nonetheless, we've made a tremendous imprint in Canberra, tremendous. Like, we're at the top table. They understand exactly how important this project is for the country and the dramatic changes that we're leading in terms of governance, cleaning things up. And then in terms of First Nations and regionalism, I would say, and diversity, these things are a core part of the CMO's policy framework and the refresh. And if you read the refresh closely, you'll see that we're quoted there. Taiwan. And our submission went round and round and round and round and round, and it is still being read and commented upon right through government. I can confirm, I think that DESA's, doing some new things in critical minerals. We're going to be engaged there. We're engaged all the way through, really, in government and really helping drive and steer things. In terms of money, there's a bunch of small grants around, some of which could be helpful. We've applied for one already, and there'll be other things that come through. The question for government in the whole sector is, are there going to be these huge checks? And I don't think so. The strategy is quite clear. What they're trying to do is open up the channels for international investment, which is going back to the point I made before, which is that all this money is offshore. And if they can open up the spigots, like with this US-Australia compact, then that's how they see the sector evolving. And that's consistent with strategic objectives in terms of national policy more broadly defined. So that's really where they're going. They don't want corporate welfare in the sector. And I agree with that. Some of the grants that were given, particularly under the Modern Manufacturing Initiative, are dubious, to say the least. Government should not be picking winners, and they should certainly not be picking losers. And so, they're very careful in terms of the adverse impacts it can have. The case I made was just go hard at R&D, and I think that's resonating, and I hope there'll be more of that. And I would say as well, you've seen initiatives at the state level, territory level. I think that will continue, including in our case. WA, NT, Queensland's ahead. And I think it's partly because Anna's going into political giving season, and, she's trying to win an election she probably won't. So these things have cycles. I think the critical minerals thematic is absolutely durable, and there'll be the right times. NAIF has ring-fence funding now for $500 million in critical minerals. That's very important. We've got good relationships there, restoring them from previously not good relationships. The fact that we're so prominent across that Northern Australian corridor is special. It's really important for NAIF, which is fantastic. Putting boots on the ground, making those small gains, places like Wyndham, Kununurra, and then Darwin, obviously, they're going to be, right at the table. They are tending to move further down the timeframes in terms of decisions, but having those conversations when we've decided what we really want with them is key. I can confirm that we've been in extended negotiations with Export Finance Australia. The one good thing, I would say, that I found on the project finance side was that $300 million commitment from EFA. As a letter of intent, it's just a letter. I've said this before, but it's relevant, and I've been working with EFA on that. And the aim is to novate that. And that would put us in rarefied territory in terms of Speewah, because the EFA has only written a handful, I think 8 of those sorts of letters. It's difficult at the moment for them to do more. Some of those letters have already fallen over because of projects being mismanaged. And so if and when we can novate that from Peake to Speewah, that will be fantastic. And Jason Giltay, who's been tremendous in the trenches, particularly, the whole time, but these last 2 weeks, it's been a very busy time. We're working on closely with EFA on that, and the relationships is really good. And that's really, really important. So there'll be other developments in this sector. The big one on the horizon is the Value Adding and Resources Fund. And that's going to be really important for where we're at that time. Obviously, subsidization of middle arm is out there. You have to have constructive, informed, durable relationships with government all the way. You could define CSIRO as part of government, by the way, as well. But we have to have that. We're earning that, and we're earning the respect and engagement of government. I probably talk to government every day in some capacity. And in some days, that's all I do. So we're having a massive outsized impact, I would say, on how the sector's going to evolve. And I think ultimately that will convert in terms of assistance if and when we need it. A question on the cap raise. Just mindful of time, guys, 5 minutes. Is it possible to have future payments at a premium rather than a discount? It depends on the situation. A premium is extraordinarily unusual. I think I don't know if I've seen one in this sector. And I think the issue there is that you're trying to align new shareholders with existing shareholders, right? And so a new shareholder will say, well, why am I paying a premium? And that's a fair question. And so if you've just found lithium, for example, yeah, maybe. I think Solace, the one company that's sort of exploded this year, but even they raised at a discount, but they're up. They've broken away from where they raised. They're up 60, 70%. So that's an example. If you have an event, it's possible, but it's not really the point, because what you're trying to do is bring everyone along, small shareholders, and then move up to instos. And, the instos will command their own terms to some degree, but it's all about making the company so strong that when you're in that table, firstly, that you're actually at that table, and secondly, that you can structure a deal which promotes the best interests of the company, because that's ultimately what the board's about, and the board will be signing off on anything like that. So again, Christine, Anthony, I executed the raise, obviously, but the board was there, fully informed the whole time, and they understood the strategy. They empowered me to pursue it, because it's not easy when you've under sort of cost duress, cash duress, which we were, to still be strong enough to do what I did. Like, again, think about these other companies in the sector. They're going to have $5, $10, $20 million in the bank. They don't do what I just did. They're lazy. They just hand it over to the brokers, take a 20% discount, get back on the lifestyle and do it again. That's it. The model is fundamentally different. If you can't see that, then again, I'm probably out of time explaining it. So, but listen, we'll see if and when, but again, really reinforcing that point, which is, I want shareholders not to be afraid of future cap raises. I want them to be excited. It's like, wow, Grant might bring in someone who's really differentiated, who'll be there for the right reasons, which is to help grow the company. And that's aligned to everyone. So that's really what I've achieved, I think, with that raise as a starting point, and there'll be more to come. Ray, can you please restate the reasons for not proceeding with Mount Peake? Because it wasn't viable. Julie, what strategies do we have in place for climactic situations? I'm not quite sure what that means, Julie, but, obviously as you go through project planning, all the engineering solutions are there. And if you're talking about cyclonic cladding or so on and so forth, or if I'm not really sure if you talk about climate change and so forth, so that would be a broader discussion. Phil, what happens to Mount Peake from here? It stays on the balance sheet, Phil. In that reduced form, and that's what we've done. And we might drill again at some point. Again, we might facilitate the pilot, but that's it for now. Rudy, hey, what are your short, medium-term, long-term hopes for Sandover? Yeah, the short is that Roman finds something. The medium is that Roman finds something, and the long is that we build something. Or again, if we find something that'll provide optionality to the company. It's one of the reasons I did that deal early, was because I could see with Roman, we could get creative on financial optioneering. And if we find something, whammo, and I can get in a deal room with someone and crystallize value early, which would be great. I got to find something, but I wanted that optionality, and it really kicks in this quarter. Roman's out there. He's super fast. So, who's to say? I'm not going to speculate. But anytime, that's just one of the big past releases out there that we've got access to. There's many others. It is highly prospective. I checked it out with NTGO before we did it. People are quite excited about the area. And if anyone's going to find something, it's going to be Roman. So we'll see. We'll see. It would be, as I said, this great irony if it happened, and we'll manage it for the best interest of the company, Rudy, of course. It's just that optionality that I was interested in, and the deal's there, and we're with an absolute trusted pro in Roman. Like he's different. He's using technology that he built like 3-4 years ago, which now the majors are trying to catch up with. Like he's absolute cutting edge. So it's exciting. Don't want to overplay it because it's sort of like a lottery, but it's not like a lottery. Like the odds are actually pretty good in our case. So we'll see what happens. Unexpected events. Oh, okay. So I'm going to wrap up here. But the last question is, I think Julie meant what would happen to the strategy to cope with constraints of the wet season and access to Speewah. Well, the wet season, we know when the wet season is. It's sort of like mid-November to March. We've already been out to Speewah. We know the roads. We know the work. I won't say too much about the preparatory work we're doing, but obviously we're ahead of it. The road ultimately will have to be sealed, and the mine would be operating 24/7. It's a sealed road down to Wyndham, and it's a great road as well. And so it's all there, but for like the last 30 kilometers, and that's a complicated story. But we're obviously going to be able to handle where we are, and we're not concerned about that as such. Again, look at Argyle, for example. I mean, that's been around for 40 years. So, all right. So we are at the hour and a half, and I hope that I've conveyed, the core messages, which were really, when you step back, if you've listened to the whole thing, just reinforcing the importance of, obviously the transformative change, but the nature of the cap raise. I wanted to amplify that. I guess I've done that. But the main substantive takeout today is the Project Fast Track. That is a really, really significant structural shift that has been underway for months already at the company, but we're using this opportunity to communicate it, and more will be revealed. And again, that core messaging of being able to walk and chew gum, like we've got the best resource in the world. We know that. And we've got, therefore, opportunities to do things which are really important strategically for the country over the medium to long term. And we've got potentially a shorter term opportunity to build the company. And that's what we're exploring aggressively with the right people at the right times, and we'll continue to do that. I hope to be in a position to communicate that. I mean, obviously, I'm going to communicate as soon as possible, but it will be disciplined. It will be transparent. It will be forthright. All of the foundational achievements that you've seen for the past 6 months, it's embedded in the firm now. People saying I'm putting out too many announcements. I'm like, what are you talking about? Being transparent, it matters. It commands a premium in a stock, ultimately, because you trust management. You're getting what you want. If you don't want to read it, don't read it. It's no problem. A lot of people want to read it. So, we're going to communicate, as I said, in a timely, forthright fashion to build trust. And that, in turn, will build credibility and cap raises, facilitation, and so on and so forth. And all of those things are taking place. So as soon as we can communicate more on the Fast Track initiative, what it looks like, how it complements the longer project delivery framework, we will. In the meantime, I think shareholders can look forward to, now that we've got some cash, just accelerated developments across multiple work streams and deal flow. That's a big focus of mine for the second half. So I'll leave it here, and I would just close out by saying thank you. I know it's a unique journey. I know there are a lot of true believers, and I really appreciate that. I'm a true believer myself. Rise above the noise. It's inevitable. Next couple of weeks, focus on core mission, the stuff that you can see us achieving, which is real. And I hope as many people can come to the AGM in December as possible, because we'll put on a great event. I think we will set up a room, yes, in Melbourne. That's a good idea, because Melbourne is absolute stronghold for Taiwan, and we really appreciate the support down there. It's very personal, and we really value that. So we'll put on probably some sort of digital event in Melbourne, but want to invite as many people up to the territory to see the standing that Taiwan's achieved up there and the excitement that's up there for us. And we'll try and do that in advance, so people have the opportunity, but ultimately the event will be the end of October, we expect. So I'll leave it here. Thank you.